My friends, there are moments in life when everything seems to fall apart, when no matter how hard you try, the problem refuses to move, the door refuses to open, the situation refuses to change. My friends, there are moments in life when you reach the end of yourself. You've done everything you know how to do. You've prayed, you've tried, you've planned, you've sacrificed. You've stayed up at night thinking of solutions, hoping that somehow tomorrow will bring the answer. But still, nothing changes. The situation remains the same. The door stays closed. The person doesn't change. The opportunity doesn't appear. And in your heart you start to whisper, maybe I'm not enough. Maybe God isn't listening. But I want you to listen closely, because this truth can change your life forever. If you can't fix it, God already has a plan. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but God is already working behind the scenes. He's not surprised by what's happening to you. He's not caught off guard by your pain, your loss, or your delay. He saw this moment long before you ever got here, and He already designed a way through it. You see, there comes a time when your strength runs out. There comes a time when you have to stop trying to play God and simply trust God. We live in a world that teaches us to fix everything. Fix your career, fix your relationships, fix your reputation, fix your emotions. But the truth is, not everything is meant to be fixed by your hands. Some things are meant to be surrendered into His. Because what you cannot control, God can transform. When life seems out of your hands, that's often when it falls directly into His. Sometimes, God allows you to reach a place where human power fails, not to break you, but to build your faith. You see, if you could fix everything on your own, you would never learn to depend on Him. You would never discover the peace that comes when you say, Lord, I can't, but I know You can. When you stop striving, you start hearing. When you stop fixing, you start trusting. When you stop fighting what you don't understand, you start to see what God has been doing all along. He is never late, never early, but always right on time. Maybe you've been praying for something that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's healing, a breakthrough, a dream that seems to be dying, and now you're tired. You're wondering if you should just give up. But let me tell you, when you can't fix it, don't give up. Look up, because the same God who parted the sea, who calmed the storm, who raised the dead, that same God has not forgotten you. Sometimes the answer doesn't come because God is not finished preparing the way. Other times, He's not just preparing the way, He's preparing you. He's shaping your heart, strengthening your faith, teaching you to walk by trust, not by sight. The delay is not rejection. It's direction. It's God saying, hold on, I'm building something you can't yet see. There's a reason the door didn't open. There's a reason the plan didn't work. There's a reason the person walked away. You might not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and realize that God was protecting you from something that wasn't meant for you. What looks like loss is often love in disguise. So today, instead of worrying, rest. Instead of asking why, start saying thank you. Thank Him for the plan you can't yet see. Thank Him for the strength to stand. Thank Him that even in your waiting, He's working, because the truth is, your story isn't over. The author hasn't stopped writing, and what you see as a setback is only a setup for something greater. So don't let your heart be troubled. Don't lose your faith. If you can't fix it, that's not failure. That's your invitation to trust the one who can. For when you reach the end of your strength, you haven't reached the end of God's plan. You've simply reached the beginning of His miracle. There are times in life when you look around and realize you have no idea what's happening. The road ahead is dark, the future feels uncertain, and you can't see how anything good could possibly come from what you're going through. You try to make sense of it, but it just doesn't add up. You pray, and it feels like your prayers hit the ceiling. You look for signs, but everything stays silent. You start to wonder if maybe you missed something. Maybe you took a wrong turn somewhere, or maybe God has stopped listening. But I want to tell you, even when you can't see the way, God is still guiding your steps. Even when you can't hear His voice, He is still speaking through the silence. You see, God doesn't always show you the full picture at once. Sometimes He reveals just one step at a time. And that's what faith is, walking even when you can't see where the path leads. It's trusting that God's hand is holding yours, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. The truth is, He hides the next chapter not to confuse you, but to teach you to depend on Him. If He showed you everything right now, you might run ahead, thinking you could do it on your own. But when you can't see the way, you're forced to lean on Him. Not on your logic, not on your understanding, but on His unchanging promise. When life becomes uncertain, that's not the time to panic. It's the time to press closer to God, because even in the silence, He's working. Even when it looks like nothing is happening, the pieces are being put together behind the scenes. God is not idle, He's invisible. He's orchestrating people, timing, and circumstances for your good. You may be standing in a place of confusion today, but you are not standing outside of His plan. You are still right where you need to be, and sometimes the very thing that feels like a dead end is actually the beginning of something beautiful. Maybe you lost the job you thought was your future, but God is preparing one that will fulfill your purpose. Maybe that relationship ended not because you failed, but because God is clearing the path for someone who will love you the way you were meant to be loved. Maybe the door that slammed shut was not rejection, it was redirection. God's no is often His way of protecting you from something that wasn't meant to be yours. Think about it. When you walk through fog, you don't stop just because you can't see the whole road. You take the next step, then another, trusting that as you move forward, the path will become clearer. That's how God works. He doesn't promise clarity, He promises presence. He doesn't promise ease, He promises strength. And He doesn't promise that you'll always understand, but He does promise that you'll never be alone. When you can't see the way, don't assume God is silent. He may be teaching you how to listen differently. Maybe He's speaking through your patience, through your waiting, through your stillness. You don't need to see everything, you just need to know that He sees everything. You don't have to control every detail. You just have to trust that every detail is under His control. So hold on, even in the dark, because light is coming. The season of confusion is not permanent, it's preparation. The silence doesn't mean God is absent. It means He's aligning your life with His perfect timing. And when His plan finally unfolds, you'll look back and realize that every unanswered prayer, every delay, every detour was leading you to something far greater than what you were asking for. You'll understand that when you couldn't see the way, God was guiding you every step of the way quietly, faithfully, perfectly. Faith is not always loud. It doesn't always shout from the rooftops or shine like lightning in the night. Sometimes faith is quiet. It's the whisper that says, "I still believe." Even when everything around you screams that it's over, faith is what keeps you standing when life tries to knock you down. It's the choice to trust that God is still working when your eyes can't find a single sign of progress. Real faith is not built in comfort, it's forged in uncertainty. It's not when everything is going right that your faith grows, but when everything seems to be falling apart and you still decide to believe. Faith means believing that God already has a plan, not that he might fix it, not that he could fix it, but that he already has . Even when you don't see the way forward, even when the situation looks impossible, you can rest in the truth that God is already several steps ahead. He has already prepared the answer. He has already spoken to the right people. He has already aligned the right timing. You may not see the evidence right now, but heaven is not silent, it's active. Behind what looks like delay, divine design is taking shape. When you walk by faith, you stop demanding that life makes sense. You stop needing to understand every detail. You simply trust that God's plan is wiser than your logic, stronger than your fear, and better than your dreams. There are moments when it feels like nothing is happening, but those are often the moments when God is doing his deepest work in you. Sometimes he's not changing your situation because he's using the situation to change you. Faith is the bridge between where you are and where God is taking you. You don't have to see the whole bridge to take the first step. You just need to know that the bridge is strong. That's what trust looks like. You don't need to understand how God will work it out. You only need to know that he will. Because he never begins something he doesn't intend to finish. Maybe right now you're walking through something that feels too heavy to carry. A loss, a heartbreak, a disappointment, a prayer that hasn't been answered. You've cried, you've questioned, and you've wondered if God even cares. But remember this, your faith is not wasted. Every tear you've shed, every moment you've chosen to believe when it would have been easier to give up, none of it is unseen. God keeps every tear, he hears every prayer, and he honors every step of faith. Even when you can't see what he's doing, he's weaving something beautiful out of your pain. Faith is the seed planted in darkness that blooms in light. You may not see anything sprouting right now, but that doesn't mean the seed is dead. It's growing beneath the surface. God's plan is unfolding quietly, and one day when the time is right, it will burst forth in ways you never expected. So stop trying to figure out every detail. Stop letting fear write the story that only faith can finish. Stand firm in the belief that God is good, even when life is not. Trust that his timing is perfect, even when it feels late. Believe that he is faithful, even when you are tired. Faith doesn't deny reality. It declares that God's truth is greater than reality. Faith says, even though I can't see it, I know it's coming. Even though I don't feel it, I know he's near. Even though I don't understand it, I know he's in control. That's the power of faith. It lets you walk confidently into the unknown because you know the one who holds the future. So today, let your heart rest. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to believe that the one who made the heavens and the earth is already writing your victory. Even in silence, even in darkness, even in delay, God is working, and your faith is the proof that his plan is already in motion. My friend, there comes a point in every journey where God doesn't ask you to do more. He asks you to let go. We spend so much of our lives trying to hold everything together, our plans, our future, our relationships, our image, our control. We think if we can just hold it tight enough, we can keep it from falling apart. But sometimes the very thing you are gripping is what's keeping you from receiving what God wants to give you. God never intended for you to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. He never designed you to fix every problem or control every outcome. There is a peace that comes only when you finally surrender and say, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over. It means saying, God, I can't, but I know you can. When you release your situation into His hands, you make room for His power to move. As long as you keep fighting to control it, you're telling God that you can handle it on your own. But when you finally step back and say, Lord, have your way, that's when heaven begins to move on your behalf. Your surrender is not a sign of weakness, it's an act of faith. It's the moment you stop depending on your own strength and start depending on His. Sometimes the reason peace feels far away is because you're holding on too tightly. You're trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You're trying to force what God is asking you to trust Him with. Maybe you've been trying to make a relationship work that God has already told you to release. Maybe you're trying to make a dream happen that God is still preparing you for. Maybe you're holding onto guilt from the past, afraid to let it go because it's become part of your identity. But hear this truth: what you release, God redeems. When you surrender what you cannot control, He turns it into something far more beautiful than you could have imagined. There's something powerful about open hands. Closed hands can only hold what they already have, but open hands are ready to receive something new. The moment you open your hands and release your fear, your plans, your pain, your control, that's the moment peace enters. That's the moment faith begins to breathe again. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying it alone. It means you let God take the driver's seat while you rest in the passenger's seat, trusting that He knows where He's going even when you don't. Think about it. When a child holds their father's hand, they don't need to know the directions or the destination. They just know who they're walking with. That's what true surrender looks like. It's not blind faith. It's confident trust in a faithful God. It's believing that even when you don't know what's next, the one leading you does. Maybe you've been holding on because you're afraid that letting go means losing control. But the truth is, you were never in control to begin with, and that's not a reason for fear. It's a reason for peace. Because if God has already written your story, you can rest knowing the ending will be good. He's never failed before, and He won't start now. So lift your hands not in defeat, but in surrender. Say, God, I give you my plans, my fears, my future. I give you what I don't understand. I choose to trust that you already have a plan. And then let peace wash over you. Stop trying to hold together what God is asking you to hand over. Because when you surrender, you don't lose, you win. You win rest instead of worry, peace instead of panic, strength instead of striving. When you finally let go, you don't fall, you fly. You rise higher than you ever could on your own, because now you're lifted by the hands of the one who never lets go. There's a beautiful truth that many people forget. The moment you stop trying to fix everything on your own, that's the moment God begins to work in ways you never imagined. When you surrender your strength, He releases His. When you stop wrestling with fear, He fills you with faith. When you release your control, you make room for His miracle. God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your permission. He's waiting for you to step back and say, Lord, have your way. Because the truth is, when you stop fighting in your own power, you start living in His peace. So many times we confuse surrender with failure. We think if we stop trying, we're giving up. But real faith is not about giving up. It's about giving over . It's handing over what's too heavy for you to carry and trusting that God can handle it better than you ever could. You were never created to carry the full weight of your pain, your future, or your purpose. That's why you feel tired when you try to control it all. Because it's not your job to fix what only God can heal. The moment you say, I can't do this alone, heaven says, now I can. When you lift your hands, don't lift them in defeat. Lift them as a declaration of trust. You're not saying, I give up. You're saying, I give it to you, God. That's the most powerful position a person can take, hands lifted, heart surrendered, spirit trusting. It's in that moment that peace replaces panic. It's in that moment that faith begins to rise again. Because surrender is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of a miracle. Maybe right now, you're standing in the middle of something that feels unfixable. You've prayed, you've cried, you've tried everything you know, but it still feels like nothing is changing. You're tempted to think that God has forgotten you, but He hasn't. Sometimes God doesn't remove the mountain. He teaches you to climb it with grace. Sometimes He doesn't calm the storm right away. He calms you in the middle of it. You see, the miracle is not always in the change of your circumstances. Sometimes the miracle is in the change of your heart. When you trust God's plan, you begin to see that every disappointment was actually direction. Every delay was divine timing. Every no was protection. God is never withholding something from you. He's preparing something better for you. What looks like loss to you may actually be love from Him, because He sees what you can't. He knows what's around the corner. He understands the bigger picture. You might see the broken pieces, but He sees the masterpiece. So walk forward with confidence. You're not walking into the unknown. You're walking into a plan that has already been written by the hands of a faithful God. The same God who opened the Red Sea can open a way for you. The same God who turned water into wine can turn your pain into purpose. The same God who brought light out of darkness can bring beauty out of what feels like ashes. And when it finally happens, when the breakthrough comes, when the prayer is answered, when the tears turn into joy, you'll look back and realize something powerful. God was working the entire time. Even when you thought He was silent, He was setting things in place. Even when you thought you were forgotten, you were being prepared. So don't lose hope in the waiting. Don't let your faith fade in the silence. If you can't fix it, that's not a sign of defeat. It's a sign that it belongs to God now. Trust that He already has a plan. Keep your heart open, your spirit surrendered, and your faith alive. Because the story you're living right now is not a tragedy in the making. It's a miracle in progress. And one day soon, you'll see that every tear, every prayer, every moment of waiting was leading you exactly where you were meant to be. If you can fix it, you don't need faith. But when you come to the point where you can't, when everything you've tried has failed, when the answers aren't coming and the path ahead is unclear, that's when faith truly begins. That's when you step out of your own strength and into God's strength. You see, faith was never meant for the moments when life is easy or predictable. It was meant for the times when your back is against the wall, when logic no longer works, and when you have nothing left to rely on but the promises of God. That's when faith becomes real, not as a concept, but as the breath that keeps you going. When everything in you wants to give up, faith whispers, hold on. When your heart says it's over, faith says God is not done yet. When the door slams shut, faith says there's another one about to open. That's the beauty of believing in a God who never fails. He doesn't need the situation to make sense in order to make a miracle. You may be facing a problem you can't fix, a dream that seems impossible, or a season that feels endless. But that's exactly where faith belongs, not in what you can handle, but in what only God can do. Faith doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means believing that even when it's not fine, God is still in control. It's the courage to smile through tears, to keep walking when you can't see the road, to pray when you don't feel strong enough to speak. Faith is not about denying your reality. It's about declaring God's reality in the middle of it. It's looking at the mountain and saying, I don't know how, but I know who. It's believing that what's impossible for man is still possible for God. When life gets hard, you'll always have two voices speaking to you. One will say, "Give up, it's hopeless." The other will say, "Keep going, God's got this." The one you listen to will shape your story. Faith chooses the second voice, the one that believes that even in the middle of chaos, God is orchestrating something beautiful. Because nothing is wasted in His hands. The tears, the trials, the waiting, it's all part of a divine plan that is still unfolding. There's a moment in every believer's life where you realize that faith isn't about seeing results. It's about trusting in relationship. You stop saying, "God, show me," and you start saying, "God, I trust you." You stop needing to understand and you start resting in His understanding. You start realizing that the presence of the storm doesn't mean the absence of God. Sometimes it means He's teaching you how to stand in the rain and not drown. If you can fix it, you don't need faith. But when you can't fix it, that's when you're standing in the perfect position for a miracle. God does His greatest work in impossible places. He takes what looks like defeat and turns it into deliverance. He takes what feels like an ending and transforms it into a new beginning. The same God who brought Joseph from the prison to the palace, who turned the cross into resurrection, can turn your pain into purpose. So if you're standing in front of something that seems too big for you, good. You're in the right place. That's where faith thrives. That's where you'll see God's hand the clearest. Don't be afraid of what you can't fix. Be excited about what God can. Because the impossible is just His stage, and your faith is His spotlight. And one day, when the storm passes and the pieces come together, you'll look back and smile. You'll realize that what you thought was breaking you was actually building you. What you thought was the end was the beginning of something far greater. You'll see that the moment you couldn't fix it was the moment God showed you He already had a plan. There will come a day when you look back at the hardest moments of your life and realize something you could not see before, that even in the chaos, even in the heartbreak, even in the silence, God was working. The tears you cried were not wasted. The nights you felt forgotten were not ignored. The moments you thought you were alone were the very moments God was closest. You may not have understood it then, but one day you will. One day, when you look back, you'll see that the delays were direction, the pain was preparation, and the confusion was protection. You'll see that every step, even the ones that hurt, led you exactly where you were meant to be. If you can't fix it right now, that doesn't mean it's over. It means it's in the hands of someone who can do far more than you ever could. You may think nothing is happening, but God never sleeps. While you're crying, He's planning. While you're waiting, He's arranging. While you're wondering how you'll get through it, He's already written your way out. You see, God doesn't operate on your schedule. He works according to purpose, not pressure. And just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it never will. It means He's not done perfecting it. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not moving mountains. It's waiting while God moves them for you. Waiting is not wasted when your trust is in the right place. Waiting refines you. It stretches your patience, deepens your faith, and teaches you to listen. You begin to realize that God's timing is not a delay. It's a demonstration of His wisdom. Because if He gave you everything you wanted when you wanted it, you wouldn't be ready to hold it. Sometimes the promise isn't late, you're just still being prepared for it. Think about how seeds grow. You plant them, and for a while, there's no sign of life. It looks like nothing is happening beneath the soil. But deep under the surface, roots are spreading, foundations are forming, and strength is being built. Then one day, without warning, it breaks through the ground. That's how God's plan works. You might be in the dark soil right now, wondering why nothing seems to grow. But that doesn't mean God has forgotten you. You're just in the growing phase, the part where roots take hold before the breakthrough comes. You see, the waiting room of life is not punishment, it's preparation. Every season of stillness is meant to strengthen you for what's ahead. Every unanswered prayer is an invitation to trust deeper. Every delay is God saying, not yet, but soon. You have to stop measuring God's love by how quickly He answers and start trusting His love because He always answers. Just not always in the way you expect. Sometimes the answer is not yes, sometimes it's not yet, and sometimes it's I have something better. God's plan doesn't always match your plan because His perspective is higher. He sees the entire picture, the past, the present, and the future, and He weaves it all together into something perfect. You may only see the single thread of pain, but He sees the entire tapestry of purpose. That's why He asks you to trust Him, even when you don't understand Him. Faith doesn't mean you always know what's happening. It means you know who is happening. When you finally see what God has been preparing for you, you'll realize why it took so long. You'll understand why certain doors had to close, why some people had to leave, why the timing had to be delayed. You'll understand that what looked like loss was really love. God's love keeping you from less than what He planned. The heartbreak that once broke you will become the testimony that builds someone else. The failure that once humiliated you will become the wisdom that helps you lead others. The pain that once brought you to your knees will become the proof that God never left you there. So hold on. Even when the night feels endless, morning always comes. Even when the storm feels too heavy, the sky always clears. Your story isn't stuck. It's still unfolding. And the same God who started your story is faithful to finish it. Every delay, every disappointment, every detour is part of the masterpiece He's creating. You just can't see the whole picture yet. Faith doesn't ignore the pain. It chooses to believe that purpose exists within it. It's the strength to stand still and say, God, I don't get it, but I trust you. Because even when nothing makes sense, He is still good. Even when life seems unfair, He is still faithful. Even when your plans fall apart, His never do. And one day, when the pieces come together, you'll look back with tears of gratitude and say, now I understand. God already had a plan all along. The things that once broke you will become the very proof of His faithfulness. The waiting will make sense. The silence will make sense. The pain will make sense. Because every season that confused you was a step toward the miracle that completed you. So don't lose hope in the middle of the mystery. Don't give up because you can't see the ending yet. The story isn't finished and the author never fails. If you can't fix it, that's not your burden, it's God's opportunity. Trust that His plan is still unfolding, even if you can't see it right now. And when it finally unfolds, you'll realize He didn't just fix it. He *fulfilled *it.